Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar, Humanising Your Brand, hosted by the Construction Marketing Awards and presented by Refresh Public Relations. My name's Chris Ashworth. I'm one of the organisers of the Construction Marketing Awards. We were established to encourage best practice in marketing, and we hope this webinar will give you some ideas to apply to your own business. The two companies represented today are both finalists in this year's CMAs, with the winners being announced at the gala dinner on the 1st of December. So I'll wish them all good luck with that finalist. Just to let you know that we are recording this webinar and it will be available to download. I'll send you an email either later today or tomorrow so you can access that. If you have any questions, please use the webinar facility and we'll answer them at the end of the presentation. I'd now like to ask our speakers to introduce themselves, starting with Laura.
Hi, I'm Laura. I'm MD of Refresh, which is 13 years old this year. I've personally worked in the construction sector for around 20 years, and Refresh has worked with construction companies since its infancy. So we have a lot of construction clients on the books today who have a mixture of PR and communication services from us.
Thank you. And Laura is joined by her colleague Lucy.
Hi everyone, Lucy here. I'm an Associate Director at Refresh, so I manage the kind of strategy, planning and servicing for the agency across a number of our accounts, including a number in the built environment and construction sector. I work really closely with Mel on the Etex and Cinia account.
And thank you. And we also have just introduced Melanie from Etex, who is also going to give us some ideas. Melanie, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yep, so hi everyone, I'm Melanie Davies. I'm head of marcomms at Etex Building Performance. We're a construction products manufacturer. We manufacture drywall through our Cinia brand, fire protection through our ProMat brand, and fire stopping through our FSI brand. And as Lucy mentions, we've worked with Refresh for a good 2 years now, implementing, humanising the brand alongside some other elements as well.
Thank you very much, Mel. So to start, Lucy, humanising your brand, why now?
Yeah, so it's an interesting one actually, because I think in some senses companies have been doing this for years. So if you think about kind of Innocent Smoothies back in the day and the strategies they implemented through to kind of how Burger King's doing its comms nowadays, the whole Aldi versus kind of M&S stuff that's kind of going on. But I think traditionally it was more of a B2C move. But we are seeing increasingly now more and more B2B or corporate businesses harnessing the strategy of humanising the business. And that's really to achieve a number of core objectives. So some of the most popular ones we see as an agency, they might be doing it to either, win more business or connect with the customers on a deeper level. They might be doing it to increase engagement and buy-in with current employees. Or indeed, they might be doing it to build employer brand to attract new talent into the business. In terms of why now, for me, this kind of attracting talent, the employer brand side of things, i.e. kind of positioning a company as a great place to work, has really been one of the main drivers for businesses in adopting these human first strategies over the last few years. We know that through all sectors, and the construction sector particularly has had a massive skills shortage over the past kind of few years. So I think a lot of companies now are really realising the value in engaging on a more human level, really. And then secondly, for me, another huge factor at play and what I find to be a real driver for clients wanting to humanise the business is trust, and how kind of coming across as more human feeds into that. So Edelman, who are a kind of huge global communications firm, they do a trust barometer every year, and their trust barometer in 2022, which surveyed about 40,000 people across about 30 different countries, revealed that actually trust is eroding around the globe when it comes to things like elected figurements, trust in governments, trust in the media. But actually the only area where trust seems to be rising is actually in businesses and business leaders. So I think that's actually hugely in part down to the work that many businesses are doing, to be more transparent, honest about the values, to just be more human, really. So I think that, yeah, right now businesses have a massive opportunity to capitalise on the fact that consumers are using them as a real source of trust and knowledge. But I think really they'll need to be able to properly appeal to people's human sides in order to do this effectively.
Right, and of course, although we're talking about the B2B environment, all those people that are being contacted are also consumers and so used to experiencing it that way. So Mel, as a client, how have you used this?
Yeah, so it doesn't just have to be B2B, and as Lucy mentioned, you've got your brands that are in the spotlight, like Marks and Spencer's and Aldi, that are doing it really well, and I think people sort of interact with that on a day-to-day, but that can really successfully transfer into a B2B construction category as well. So with this, I'll give more of a construction angle on this and give you some examples of how we've done it as well. I think being a construction products manufacturer and working obviously in the construction space, and we're all aware that we're at the cusp of potentially entering into a recession here in the UK. Construction work is going to be harder to win or find. So it's ever more important that as a business you use ways to stand out from the crowd, make sure that you're memorable, make sure that people are thinking of you for the sort of more limited projects or ways that you can win work. We work quite heavily in the private sector, particularly with housing, so we're starting to feel the burn as well. So I think with that we thought, how can we really stand out from the crowd? So it's really important to do that. I think as a company, your people are your greatest asset, absolutely, hands down. I think, you know, you're built with your employees. Your employees are the people who are speaking to your customers on a day-to-day basis, and they're representing your brand. So you know that your people are your greatest asset, and it's the one asset that your competitors aren't going to be promoting. So it is the one surefire way of standing out from the crowd. I think with this, it's really important to celebrate diversity, again, within the construction sector, celebrate personality. I know here at Etex, we've got some incredible people we work with, people who've got great sense of humour, great ambition. So I think it's really important not to be dry and run of the mill, really sort of enhance and celebrate those personalities. And I think as well, it's really important to show your people that they're your greatest asset as well. You know, the customers are obviously important, but so are the people that you work with on a day-to-day basis. When it comes to recruitment at the moment, employees are in the driver's seat. It's a current tight market for recruitment, so retention is really, really important. So make your employees feel valued, make sure you're showing them off to your customers. You'll be really surprised at just how many employees are willing to put themselves out there. You'd be really surprised at how many people are willing to get in front of a camera, people who, you know, may spend their day-to-day hidden behind a laptop. And I know for sure that those people will remember that opportunity for a long time. So it's a really good way of engaging employees as well.
Right, so really a win-win situation. You're engaging with employees and at the same time showing, encouraging them to engage with the customer and have a positive experience, right?
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to add, Laura, to that?
I think you've done a good job of covering it, guys. I think for me, every company is different. So by telling the story of the people, humanising it is really a way of standing out and a way of making sure people understand you as a business as well.
Right, okay. And Mel mentioned employer brand. Can you give us a bit of an overview of what this is and how it ties into humanising strategy? Yeah,
sure. So a few years ago, probably up until mid-COVID, when we received briefs off clients, it was very much about raising brand awareness. So, you know, please make noise about us. And we do that via various different means, but ultimately to enhance corporate reputation. And then I guess a couple of years ago, we started getting a lot more briefs in to do with, you know, we want to tell people about ourselves, and employer brand really looks at the inner workings, so you as internal in your company, and basically positions you as a great place to work, tells your story, talks about your values, your value proposition, what makes you different, how you're training people to be the best they can be. And I think if done well, what it ultimately does is help people realise whether they do want to come and work for you, or actually they don't want to come and work for you. Everybody's attracted to different culture, different values, what's intrinsic to them, and your employer brand will resonate with some people who will then hopefully join and stay for a very long time. It'll also appeal to people who are already at your business. You know, their values sync in with yours, so great, you're telling the story and they're on that journey as well. So it is very much about, I guess, what you do for your people, and promoting that outwardly to ultimately, yeah, storytell.
Right, okay. Anything you want to add to that, Lucy?
Yeah, I mean, I think Laura covered it perfectly. I think what I would say is that there are a number of reasons businesses might adopt kind of a strategy around humanising the business that are beyond employer brand. So I think it's important to say that the two don't have to kind of go hand in hand, but it is really, really common for the two to interlink. Most briefs that we do get as an agency and that we go down with this strategy do include an element of attracting employees, filling roles, or indeed retaining current staff. You know, imagine you're looking for a role. I'd guess that one of the first things that most people do is go and check out the website, the social media, their own channels to really get an idea of who you might be going in and working with. I know that's certainly something, well, I've been looking for roles in the past. It's one of the first things I do. So I think it's quite difficult when you get kind of a bit of a blank corporate face when you go in on that journey.
Right. And where are the top places to start when humanising the business?
Yeah, so I can start here. So I think first and foremost, I would do an audit of your kind of existing channels, your existing brand perception, and your content, just with a fresh pair of eyes, either internally or get someone external to do it. I think sometimes you can get in a bit of an echo chamber mentality when you're doing things internally to an extent, which is sometimes why that external kind of pair of eyes can help, but it doesn't need to be. So look through your social channels, look through your website, look through what's been said on Glassdoor, on your social channels and your website. You know, is the tone consistent? Does it embody your values? Does it make you sound like a human? Ultimately, when I'm writing for Refresh, and actually many of my clients, I'll always write like someone would talk. Obviously, depending on what it's for, I'd never go really informal unless it was for something specific. But I think what I always do, and what I always kind of advise people do, is when they've written something to read it out loud. And if you sound like a robot, scrap it, because no humans talk like that. So I find the reading out loud technique works really well for me. And then I think once you've done this, for me, from kind of a more tactical perspective, you're never going to go far wrong with starting with your current people. When you're going down the humanising strategy, even if you're not doing it solely for employer brand and to attract talent. So like Mel says, your biggest advocates really are your existing employees. So it's really important to start there, because you need to get that internal sentiment right before it can really roll out externally. So, you know, just treat them well, celebrate the milestones, successes, reward them for great work. And that doesn't need to be kind of on official employee of the quarters or official kind of days of the year, you know, just leaving little nice things on the desk, nice kind of surprise and delight packages, and really just involving them in the company's mission and letting them know that they do have a say in it and how they can contribute through, you know, what they're doing individually. And I think with those kind of building blocks in place, and ultimately if you have got happy employees, they're likely to start making noise organically anyway. So yeah, that's where I'd start really. And then the last thing that I'd say is to start really showcasing some of the faces that are behind your business. So your own channels are a brilliant way to start, so your website, your social media, but also outwardly. So speaker slots at events, on webinars like this, really good way to get across the personality of your business. If you don't feel comfortable, or your employees don't feel comfortable kind of public speaking, there's things like writing blogs, opinion pieces in magazines, you know, even things like sitting on steering groups and communities and collectives, are really good ways to start getting what your business is all about out into the world. And I think some of the work kind of Etex is doing around this area is a really good example. So I'm sure that's something Mel will talk you through.
Yeah. With the Etex angle, I think just sort of showing how we've applied that in practice. It's really important that whatever you're portraying and whoever you're asking to portray that really does show your company values. So you need to be really clear yourself on what those company values are, what direction your company's moving in. Be really clear on what your commercial strategy is as well. You know, what spaces do you want to own? What messaging do you want to relay? Because using that as a foundation will then make sure that your humanising strategy really is successful. There's no point in advocating something that your company doesn't actually advocate as well. So I think it's really, really important to do that. And then once you're in agreement around what it is that you want to promote or advocate, what value it is that you want to represent, that's when you can step back and say, okay, well, who in the business is the expert under these headings? As I mentioned before, who might not have had the opportunity to actually step into the limelight and show people some of the great work they're doing, and you know, who might actually be comfortable to come out and represent the company under some of those headings. I know we've got a case study later, so I'll show you a couple of ways of how we've done that. But really think about who can bring a different perspective to the business again, and that's a great place to start. I think I mentioned before as well, keep an eye on what your competitors are doing and basically don't do that. We want to make sure that we're standing out, you know, bring some personality and bring a different angle to things. It is absolutely all about that, is standing out from the crowd. And as I've mentioned before, again, just really go out of your way to identify which employees and teams are the most underrepresented, which ones are the quiet teams or individuals in the business, because they really do appreciate being asked to do these things. Make sure it doesn't seem like it's a requirement. Make sure that it seems like they've got the choice, because not everyone is comfortable to step up and do these sorts of things and get in front of the camera. But then, as Lucy says, you know, give them some second options, show that we really appreciate what they're doing, and say, you know, do you want to write a blog for us then? Do you want to feature in an infographic? There's an absolute number of different ways of doing it. But I think just making sure that it's not just one person who's consistently got that voice.
Yes, that variation, I can see that's important. Is there anything else you want to add to that, Laura?
I think in terms of planning, how we approach it with our clients is say, okay, where are we now? And have kind of a quick, I guess, just sanity check of where we are now. And then, right, where do you want to be with this? So it is real kind of basic strategy, I guess. Looking at if there's any time pressures. So is the board maybe putting pressure to change things up and really get the message out there in the next 3 months, 6 months, you know, kind of what are you dealing with here? Which really goes back to why do you want to do this? Are there any budget constraints, or can we go for broke on it? And then you're planning a route forward, and then making sure you're measuring success is really, really critical. It's really important to celebrate the success, but also, know you're on the right track. And I think I'd agree with Mel when I say, have a look out there in the marketplace for inspiration. What are other companies doing? You don't need to have an award-winning campaign when you're doing this. It just needs to communicate who you are as a company and what makes you special and you different, and your values. And that in itself will keep the people who believe in it and agree with you, and attract similar like-minded people with similar values, so it will work.
Right, thanks. So Mel, if construction companies could start with just 2 things when it comes to humanizing the brand, what would they be?
Okay, so 2 things. I think the first one would just be start by identifying what makes you special and different from the competition. So really have that key first step before you start looking at who can represent that. If you have that foundation of a campaign or a message or a strategy, I think you're set up to win then. Work out what your USP is over your competitors, but your USP doesn't necessarily need to be, you know, super salesy when it comes to stuff like this, and I don't think it should be. I think it should represent your values more than anything. So I know here at Etex we've got a few values we like to focus on. Sustainability is absolutely massive for us at the moment, as is connect and care, which I think showcasing employees really does focus on that, and also passion for excellence. So again, looking at that ambition side of things, you know, how can we strive to be better and how can we portray that? So focus on that one key message before you then start bulking it out into a communication plan. And then I think once you've done that, then start looking at who in your company can represent that. Try not to make it the same people over and over again. Who lives and breathes these values really well. It could be someone in a team that's actually, you know, completely different to what you're trying to represent, but they may come into work every day with a great sense of ambition or a great energy level, and again, getting that represented is really important. So I think I'll go into some more detail around who we showcased on a recent campaign that we did and why we showcased that a little bit further down the line.
Right, okay, fine, thank you. And Lucy, anything more you'd suggest?
Yeah, just to echo what Mel said about kind of identifying those people, and yeah, not just focusing on one or two people, showing that kind of variety, but where I'd start is, you know, really make the most of your own channels first. So your website, your social media, you can almost start kind of practicing in a way there in a safe space where you can really own the narrative. And I think really the bottom line is it's just important to just get started. Like Laura said, it doesn't need to be an all singing, all dancing kind of campaign. I think it's taking the small steps and knowing where to start rather than thinking I need to have this all worked out in the first couple of months or something, because it will be elements of trial and error. But I think, yeah, practice in that safe space where you can own the narrative, and then work out to, you know, the less kind of the places you can kind of control things less, so the media and panel slots and things like that.
Right. Laura, anything more you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'd say that it's when you start looking at where you are, it's really hard to do that appraisal of yourself. It's really, really difficult. We've tried to do it ourselves and failed on a couple of occasions. It's really easy for us to do it for our clients, but not on ourselves. So we used resources like Business Growth Hub, for example, and had consultants come in to help us with it, who can just add that impartiality and maybe ask some awkward questions that you probably wouldn't ask if you were doing it yourselves. So there's lots of resources out there, so I'd just have a look for what's most appropriate for you. And then finally, I've just got a note. I'd say that you really need on this to walk the walk. So you kind of can't just say one thing, but then when an employee arrives, be doing something else. What you say out there and what you do and how you act when you're employing this kind of strategy needs to really represent who you are as a business. So you can't really be making claims that don't exist. It really needs to be very transparent, particularly in 2022 and beyond.
Right, thank you. So transparency is important, which comes back to trust as well, doesn't it, in that respect, which you were referring to earlier. In the CMAs, one of the things that's really important when we evaluate entries is the metrics to prove that the various programs have been measured and have produced a good result. So Lucy, how can companies start measuring the effectiveness of a strategy like this?
So yeah, I'd say to set smart objectives from the start. So things that you can really measure. I'd say make this a focus like you would with any other areas of your business. So, you know, you'd have business objectives in place, you have PR objectives in place, you have comms objectives in place. Put them in place for this. You know, it's not uncommon for businesses to have specific employer brand objectives in, and they need to be measurable. So look at where you want to be in the short, the medium and the long term, and set them as kind of bite-sized goals as you go along. I am a massive advocate for those small steps that will eventually get you to kind of the top of the mountain. And I think you need those small goals set in stone so you can see progress, even if it is, you know, slow. And I think, like with any strategy, then move those SMART objectives into actual KPIs and then monitor them frequently. There's no point monitoring your KPIs once a year at the end of your campaign, because you need to know every month, every other month, whether you're, you know, looking towards hitting those KPIs, or if you need to be putting in more work or changing your approach a little bit to start working towards them. So depending on your objectives, you might want to look at very specific KPIs. So if you were looking at employer brand specifically, a KPI, just for example, might be, you know, you want to get an increase, percentage increase, a number increase of the number of relevant good CVs that come into the business. You might eventually want to get to a place where you don't have to use recruiters because you're getting CVs in organically, and the good quality relevant CVs. So I know a lot of businesses measure that sort of thing from an employer brand perspective. And I think as well, even things as simple as measuring kind of personal engagements with campaigns and social posts, you know, are people commenting on them? Are people just liking them as a throwaway? What does that kind of look like?
Right, okay, fine, thank you. So we've talked a lot about the theory of it. Mel, can you talk us through the process that Etex followed, perhaps starting with the principal tools that were used to measure effectiveness?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I'll start with benchmarking and dashboards. As we're probably all aware, benchmarking brand recall is quite difficult, benchmarking and obviously measuring as well. But it's really important to benchmark where you are before implementing any strategy. So what we tend to use is a digital survey. We've used SurveyMonkey in the past. It's really easy, really intuitive to use as well. We tend to send these out via a research agency, so it can be done without any sort of bias. We've used Chris, we've worked with you before, we've used Competitive Advantage to implement this before as well. And just use really simple questions. Don't show who it is who's sending the survey. Again, we want to make sure there's no bias in there. And ask simple questions like, do you recognise this brand? Do you know what they do? And one that's worked really well for us is, what 3 words spring to mind when you think about this brand? And it gives you a really a good sense of how well you're actually portraying those values. Absolutely do that at the beginning of every time you implement any new communications plan, and absolutely do it at the end as well. To try and uniform it, you want to try and get in front of the same people again. So use the same database, use the same methods, and just replicate it both ways, and measure and see what's different. And then as with anything that you do in the digital space, digital dashboards are obviously the best way to measure digital engagement. So you can monitor, you know, the usual trends such as website visits, visits to landing pages that represent the humanising strategy. You can measure how many thought leadership pieces land that represent those values. You can use social media engagement. How many positive engagements have you got? How many negatives potentially have you got as well? You can look at search term changes. What are people searching for when it comes to your brand? So there are a number of ways that you can put a bit of tangibility behind brand recall and brand awareness, and just make sure that you're relating each of those metrics to your humanising strategy as well. So when you've laid out what that strategy is and what you want to represent, just make sure the metrics represent that too.
Right, oh, that's interesting. And actually, as you touched on the fact, Competitive Advantage, our business has done some of that work for you. And it's actually really interesting today to see how what we did fits into the bigger strategy with regards to humanising the brand, which of course we didn't really appreciate at the time. So in terms of the case study, is there any more you want to run through there, Mel?
Yeah, so I mean, I mentioned at the beginning that we've worked with the team at Refresh for a good couple of years to do this. We've got a graphic designer in our team, Mike, who's been trying to do this as well since pretty much day one. So you know, we're as a team, we're all completely embedded in this strategy, and we try to implement it in as much as we possibly can. But I think today, just as a bit of a case study on what we've done recently, I'll focus on how we've promoted our new factory. So we've got a new plasterboard plant that's being built in Bristol at the moment. It's a massive investment, and we're obviously really excited about it as well. It's a great way to showcase some of the people that are working behind the scenes on that project. So starting on the points that I mentioned earlier, so point number one, what's your commercial strategy? Well, for us, the strategy behind the plant is to increase the volume of plasterboard in the UK to support output, manufacture in the UK to limit reliance on imports. So you're looking at minimising carbon footprints, so that's a nod to sustainability. And then on the whole sustainability front, we're opening what we call a factory of tomorrow. So we're utilising the utmost sustainability credentials and efficiencies to help drive that new plant as well. So sort of in a nutshell, that's what we're looking to promote whenever we speak to people about the new plant. It's these three things. Once we're all in agreement of that, we can then look at, okay, well, who in our business can represent this, and who in our business is unique, diverse, that's got a diverse opinion, diverse personality, but is also really good at what they do. So we've got a few of our teammates, a guy called Rich Jose, who works for the environment team. For anyone who's worked with them, they can vouch. He's got an absolutely brilliant personality. He's just hilarious, and we try to portray that through anything that we do with him. Very passionate at what he does as well, and is always up for doing stuff like this, so it's good to get him in front of the camera. We've got Paul Noble, who is our Director of Operations. He's massive on this whole factory of tomorrow piece. He's really inspiring and really knowledgeable, so we want to get that out in front of the camera. And then for sustainability, we've got me doing a little bit, Andy, the head of marketing, and Steve, the head of environment and sustainability, for a sort of real diverse opinion on that as well. And I think because we're so keen on sustainability, we wanted to get a few more people in front of the camera too. And then what we decided to do was film a 3-part docuseries as the build progresses. And the main thing was to try and really show these personality traits that I've just mentioned there. So we filmed episode 1, which is out already, and we've got 2 more episodes that are going to land as well. Then on the competitor piece, so what are your competitors doing and don't do that? So obviously with this one it's easy because the new plant we've got is unique in itself. But I think really focusing on sustainability, efficiencies and supply, and understanding what more the customers want will then help us with that too. And then the piece on identifying the quiet teams in the business. Not for this one, but we've been trying to get our technical support team in front of the camera more. So they're the ones at the end of the phone if someone's trying to install one of our products, or someone's got a question about technical abilities of the products or anything like that. They're the ones on the other end of the phone. In my eyes, they're the absolute face of the business. They're the ones who know exactly what they're talking about. They're real experts, but they just don't get the sort of showcase that they deserve. So we're really trying to bring them out at the moment. We're trying to get them in front of the camera more, do some interviews. And as it stands at the moment, they're really keen on doing that. So I think we're going to be pushing these out more and more as time goes on as well. So hopefully you'll see some of our technical team getting out there on LinkedIn and some other channels soon. And that's really what we're doing. We just want to continue with that and do as much as possible.
Oh, that sounds really, really good. And with the technical team as well, the face behind the advice in many respects. So that's good. Okay, fine. Thank you for that. And is there anything, Laura, Lucy, that you would like to add to that? I presume you've been involved in this program supporting as it's been implemented.
Yeah, so we've predominantly been helping with a docu-series actually. So what I'll do is, I know you're going to send an email around after this. I can send you a link to include in that, to the first episode on YouTube, so everyone can kind of get an idea of how that's come together. And like Mel says, see some of the real characters behind the scenes at Etex, because there really are some. So yeah, we're really proud of the work we've done collaboratively on that. So yeah, we'll get that sent through to you, Chris, so you can distribute it to the group.
That's great. I think people will find that interesting as an example of what's being achieved, as well as learning about your new factory as well. Anything else, Laura, that you want to add? We're covered on that.
No,
okay.
Yeah.
So I think that takes us through the whole program of the webinar. We haven't got any questions that have come through as yet. If people want to ask a question, please send it through now. But just before we finish, I'll ask one question of Mel, and that is, what have you found the most difficult bit of this to implement?
I think with anything new, and when you're trying to do anything different, we're all working in a really fast-paced environment. You know, there's always something to do, and then a million and one things behind that as well. And I think the most difficult thing about this is just remembering that the humanising pieces take more preparation time. It's not something that you can just have an idea and then roll out quickly the next day, like, I don't know, a thought leadership article or something like that. It's really important that whoever's going to be getting in front of this piece are briefed in properly, they're bought in properly. Scripts need to be written sometimes for them if people aren't as confident. Sometimes we might need to give camera training, so just remember to factor that into the timeline. The other thing as well is, remember, it's not for everyone, so don't force it. You know, don't make people feel like they have to do it, because that'll do the absolute opposite. It's not for everyone at all. And then finally, just remember to celebrate successes. If something goes well, tell people it's gone well, and remember to say thank you as well. A lot of these people are stepping above and beyond their day jobs, so just thank people. So yeah, plan it in with enough time, remember all of that, and it'll be successful, and say thank you. But I'd say that's the most difficult thing really, is just taking the time to do that in such a fast-paced work environment.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you. We've not had any other questions, so I'll just sum up and then bring things to a close. What I picked up from this was that it's something that applies to all organizations. It's an opportunity for all of them in terms of whatever the size, large organizations like Etex, but also much smaller ones. It's about both engaging with your customers and potential customers, but also about engaging with your employees and getting them more involved in the business. And in many ways, if people get the right understanding of what your business is, they can recognize that it is or is not a place they want to work. And so I guess then when you do employ people, they're less likely that it'll fall apart and won't work, and you'll end up losing employees after a few months. You should have got people who are going to be comfortable fitting in that organization. Use external input, either with the likes of Refresh, who can advise on implementing a strategy and give an independent view. And I think the word independent is very important on this, because obviously we all see our own organizations in a certain light. And I just can't miss the opportunity to mention competitive advantage in terms of a research organization that can help you with your metrics and measuring those. Don't copy your competitors, focus on your own organization's values, and show your differences, the strength that brings to the world. And as I just touched on, it's about measures as well, and being able to plot the progress that you're making so everybody knows that something's happening. I think that probably is a very brief summary of quite a lot of information that we've shared with people today. So I'll say thank you to our panel, Laura, Lucy from Refresh, and Melanie from Etex. As you can see on the screen at the moment, we've got our speakers' contact details if you want to ask them any questions directly. And as I say, we'll be sending out the link to view the video either today or tomorrow, along with the link to see the example from Etex of their new factory. So I'll say thank you for your time today. And again, thank you to Laura, Lucy and Melanie for their input.
No worries. Thank you, everyone.
Fine.
Thanks,
you.
everyone. Thank
And
you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.